Hello, and thank you for joining today's Acquisition Learning Seminar hosted by the Federal Acquisition Institute. Today's seminar, entitled It Is Easy Being Green, features three presenters from the General Services Administration, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Department of Agriculture. Today, we want to show you just how easy it is being green. Our presenters are here to discuss the laws, policies, procedures, and resources impacting your efforts to green the acquisition lifecycle, ensuring the products and services you secure for the federal government are as environmentally friendly as possible from top to bottom. There are a couple of important points I need to explain before we get started. First, the Federal Acquisition Institute is recording today's seminar. The video, along with all of the presentations you'll see, will be posted in the video library on the Federal Acquisition Institute's website, fai.gov. You should see these items in about 1 to 2 weeks. Second, we will hold a live question and answer session at the end of our presentations today. If you have a question about green procurement strategies or resources, or anything our presenters talk about, please use the link that you see running on the screen to submit your question. We will remind you about this link periodically throughout the seminar. Now, there's also a link to the right of the video screen allowing you to submit a question at any time. As you send questions in, our speakers will collect and review them on the spot. After the final presentation, we'll gather them all together and they'll be able to answer a few of your questions. With that, let's get started. Our first speaker from the General Services Administration will get us up to speed on green purchasing requirements, as well as give us a demonstration of a green procurement compilation tool. Let's get to him right now.
Hi everybody, my name is Brennan Conaway from GSA, the General Services Administration. I'm a procurement analyst. I've worked at GSA for about 10 years now, which makes me feel kind of old, but that's okay. The past couple years I've been working focusing on green purchasing and sustainability. I'm going to focus today on how to buy green. So my presentation is going to be a pretty general overview of the broad federal green purchasing requirements, but I'm also going to focus on a tool that GSA has developed called the Green Procurement Compilation that you can actually use after this presentation during your procurements. I'm also going to touch on some tips for GSA Advantage in case you use that as a method for procurement. So I'm going to consider my presentation a success today if you actually go ahead and use the Green Procurement Compilation afterwards and actually start to do or use that as a tool for your procurement. So, why actually buy green products and services? Let's start with that. Believe it or not, it's not something that we do just to torture contract specialists or contracting officers. It's not just a set of clauses that you put in your contract and then forget about. There's actually benefits to buying these kind of these products and services. We should recognize that green products and services make our agency actually better and more efficient. First, through more energy efficiency and water efficiency. There's benefits associated with reduced pollution and waste, better indoor air quality, improved worker safety, and on and on. The list of benefits just kind of keep going. So if that doesn't get your attention, there's actually opportunities for cost savings over the life cycle of these green products as well. So in this current fiscal climate, that's actually a big plus for green products and services. Another thing that's kind of interesting about green products and services, and another reason to buy them, is that as the federal community, we actually have a big impact on markets. There's been instances where the government has expressed interest in the market developing or providing green services that we want to buy. An example of this is the electronic industry, where the federal government procures a whole lot of computers. And when we indicated that we actually wanted to start buying these, the market actually delivered and started producing green electronics. And now we have a nice, robust, multi-attribute standard for IT products that's available, and we're going to actually go into that more later. It's the EPEAT registry is how you find those. Another good example of this is the 30% recovered content requirement for office and copier paper, which that was a requirement set by the federal government for our purchasing, and it's now pretty much ubiquitous in the market, and it's pretty hard to find paper that's not at least 30% recycled content. So those are some reasons why we buy green products and services. Not all the reasons, but in addition to these reasons why we buy it, a good one is that we're told to through policy. We call it a requirement for a reason. So this is kind of an overview of the major policies that require that federal buyers buy green products and services. And they're nothing new. They've been around for over 20 years now in some cases, but the requirements have recently intensified. And a good example of this is Executive Order 13514, which was released in 2009. And what that executive order did was set a 95% goal that stated 95% of the federal contract actions from that point forward had to be green. That has since been, that 95% requirement has since been embedded into the Federal Acquisition Regulation in FAR Part 23. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. So it's actually part of the FAR now. I know buyers sometimes say if it's not in the FAR, don't talk to me about it. So that is in the FAR. And of course, reinforcing all of these requirements are agency-level requirements, which, anything from acquisition regulation to green purchasing plans to green implementation plans. There's so many plans that you'd probably be surprised. And in a lot of cases, they reinforce the federal-wide policy, but certain agencies do have specific requirements based on their mission. For example, GSA has requirements about our ordering portals and the accuracy of our products that we offer to our government customers. So if you feel compelled, it may be a good idea to familiarize yourself with your own agency requirements. So let's take a closer look at the 95% goal that I talked about, because it really is the best summary of green purchasing requirements. What the executive order and the FAR specifically state is that 95% of contract actions shall be recycled content, energy efficient, water efficient, bio-based content, non-ozone depleting, non-toxic, and environmentally preferable. So that's what the policy states, and that's all well and good, but how does this actually get translated into practice, and how do we find products that meet this policy and this criteria? So luckily, there are actually environmental programs, standards, and other criteria associated with these requirements that will point you to the products you're supposed to buy. And I'm going to go through each of these requirements and provide a brief overview of those programs. So let's start with recycled content. I think we all recognize the chasing arrow symbol, which indicates recycled content. As a federal buyer, you should associate this with the Comprehensive Procurement Guidelines, which is a program managed by EPA. The Comprehensive Procurement Guidelines establishes the recovered material content levels for select product categories such as paper, construction, landscaping, and a number of other categories. And EPA states that the benefit of the program is that it ensures that the materials collected in recycling programs will be used again for the manufacture of new products. And they point out that the products work the same, the performance level is the same or better as comparable products. So for energy efficiency, there's two programs to be aware of as a federal buyer. The first is one you may recognize. It's called Energy Star, and it's a joint program of EPA and the Department of Energy. And what they do is they identify energy efficient products for about 60 product categories in both the home and office. There's a labeling program, so they actually have a system where the products are certified and they receive a label once they're certified. So you can actually see this on the products themselves. And this is one of the most successful environmental or eco-labeling programs in the world. In addition, there's another energy efficiency program called FEMP, the Federal Energy Management Program, run by DOE. And this program also sets minimum energy efficiency requirements for product categories that have the potential to generate significant federal energy savings. So the difference between FEMP and Energy Star is that FEMP doesn't purchase, recognize, endorse, or otherwise identify specific products. They set the requirements. So they're kind of behind the scenes. And they typically set the energy requirements to hit about the top 25% of the market as far as energy efficiency is concerned. So for water efficiency, there's a program called WaterSense, which is run by EPA. They have products and services that, it's also, I should point out that it's a labeling program as well, so they also certify specific products, and which are then able to use the label for that product. In general, they aim to have the performance at the top 20% of the market in terms of energy efficiency. And they point out that their products don't compromise performance. They work just as well as non-water efficient models. And they include products you'd expect to have, such as toilets, sink faucets, and shower heads. So bio-based content. There's a program managed by USDA called the Bio-Preferred Program. And they establish the minimum bio-based content for a number of different product categories. I'm not going to spend much time on this program because we have Kate Lewis, who's the Deputy Program Manager of the Bio-Preferred Program, and she's going to spend a good deal of time during this presentation providing an overview of that program. For non-ozone depleting substances, we have a program called the Significant New Alternative Program, also SNAP, not to be confused with Food Stamp Program. And what this program does is it evaluates and regulates substitutes for the ozone-depleting chemicals that are being phased out under the Clean Air Act. So what EPA does is they publish a list of acceptable and unacceptable substitutes for ozone-depleting substances based on a specific product end use. So this program includes products such as adhesives, coatings, inks, and aerosols, which when I think of ozone depleting, I think aerosol. I remember the ozone disappearing when I was in school, and aerosols, they said that was bad, so that's one of the products under this program. Lower non-toxic. So the FAR doesn't tie this requirement to a specific program in the FAR as a requirement. But there is a federal program available that provides non-toxic alternatives or low-toxic alternatives. It's called Design for the Environment, and it's managed by EPA and identifies safer chemical products that do not sacrifice quality or performance. And you'll note that I've said all of these do not sacrifice quality or performance, so that's a key takeaway for green products in general. They work. Sometimes there's a perception that green products aren't necessarily as good as brown products, but it's really not the case, at least not in this day and age. So back to DFE. The DFE logo, what it means is that the folks at DFE, at EPA, have a scientific review team, and they screened each ingredient for potential human health and environmental effects. And they've confirmed that the product contains only those ingredients that pose the least concern among chemicals in their class. And they look at products like all-purpose cleaners, laundry detergents, carpet, floor care products, things like that. And finally, we have environmentally preferable. So environmentally preferable is defined as products or services that have a lesser or reduced effect on human health and the environment when compared with competing products or services that serve the same purpose. So that's somewhat of a broad definition, but the FAR does tie that requirement to a specific program, and that is EPEAT. And EPEAT stands for the Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool, and this deals with electronic products. So when you hear environmentally preferable, the FAR ties it to EPEAT. We have Holly Elwood from EPA, who's actually going to provide a much more in-depth explanation of both the environmentally preferable program at EPA as well as the EPEAT registry and green electronics. So until recently, my presentation would probably have just ended with this overview. I would have hoped you would print out the PowerPoint, made some notes, and would actually go forth and look up all these websites and find all the products associated with these programs. But now the good thing is that GSA has an actual tool that summarizes all the products associated with these programs and has put them all in one place with other resources that you can use to make it actually easy to buy green. And it's called the Green Procurement Compilation, and it is part of a broader tool called the Sustainable Facilities Tool. Actually, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get out of the PowerPoint mode, and we're going to attempt a live demo now of the Sustainable Facilities Tool. So I think everyone can see that. Let me drink some water real quick. The GSA bottle. So little notice doing a live demo. Looks like everything's working though, so let's see. I'm also on a Mac, which I'm not too familiar with, but it seems like the keyword cursor works. The IT guys cannot believe I'm saying that. So the Sustainable Facilities Tool clearly has a buildings focus. It covers the whole life cycle of a procurement, of a building procurement or project from, you'll see at the top, where you can learn about sustainable facilities, planning, exploring, procuring, and then sharing. So I'm not going to focus on the broad tool itself, but if you're someone who works in the buildings arena as a buyer or program person, I would advise you to just go to this tool. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can walk around and familiarize yourself. I'm going to focus on the Green Procurement Compilation, which is you can go to by going to the Procure tab. And if you're at your computer and you're following along, feel free to just kind of shadow what I'm doing. Otherwise, you can just watch the screen. So, as I said, I'm going to call it the GPC from now on. The Green Procurement Compilation is the GPC. We have all of the products that have a green requirement listed here. You see that they're categorized in different categories. The categories kind of came about based on how federal buyers purchase things. It was actually a federal interagency work group that focuses on green purchasing. They kind of organically developed this list, so the categories should match the way the federal buyer community works. I will point out that there is a link here for find out about all these environmental programs. Those icons should look familiar because I just went through it on the PowerPoint. If you want to learn more about these programs that I just briefly went through, this is a resource that you can go to, and you'll see all the ones I talked about, such as Biopreferred, CPG, DFE, etc. So I wanted to point that out since I just kind of provided an overview. I'll go back to the Procure tab, to the GPC. So there's two ways that you can look for a green product. First, you can go through these categories that we have set up, and I'll show you how that works. Let's say you're in the market for some appliances. Go ahead and click on appliances. You'll see a number of specific product types that are available, anything from commercial fryers to freezers to microwaves to air conditioning. So let's say that you want to buy a commercial freezer. Let's click on that and see what we have. This is where the tool actually provides the specific green purchasing requirements and information that you need to make your purchase. So most important and probably the most simple piece of information is up here on the left, procurement info, where it says, you can put your cursor over this green icon. So this is where it points out what requirement exists for a commercial freezer, and you'll see that there's an Energy Star requirement. So if you take, that's 90% of what you need to know right there is if I'm buying a commercial freezer, it needs to be Energy Star compliant. And you'll see this asterisk here next to it, which means that federal agencies are actually required to purchase the Energy Star brand. So it's not just guidance, like this is actual requirement from the FAR. You'll see the legal requirements below if you need to cite or explore in detail the actual FAR citation for this. If you go to FAR 23.2, 23.1, it's going to tell you, you got to buy Energy Star products. The GPC also provides additional guidance, so guidance meaning not necessarily a requirement, but something good to know or something you should incorporate into your procurement. This product says that solid door refrigerators and freezers are substantially more efficient than a glass door models. So I take that to mean if you have the choice between an Energy Star, two Energy Star products, and one has glass door model, one has solid door, you probably want to go with the solid door to get the extra energy efficiency savings and associated cost savings with that. Also note that there's a sentence here about how there's a MS Excel-based calculator that you can use to estimate how much money you will save for a specific product. So that's a life cycle costing calculator that you can use to estimate what the savings are. So if there happens to be a higher upfront cost with the Energy Star product, which isn't always the case or necessarily usually the case, you can see that you can actually calculate the cost savings you'll have by buying the energy efficient product over the life cycle, which you can then use in your best value determination when you're making the purchase. And then this is a new piece of info that I actually just saw today, that we're now pointing out products that contribute to the high performance and sustainable buildings guiding principles. So if you're a building person, that's a specific piece of information that you can note. And this, if you're curious about what that is, you can click on that link and learn more about what those guiding principles are. And finally, going back up, I skipped this section, where to buy. That's exactly what it does. It shows you where you can buy these products, at least through the GSA schedules. So you'll see that, I think I've been saying freezers when I've been working with, I've been saying refrigerators when I've been freezers. I apologize if that's the case. Schedule 51V, the SIN 639002 has freezers available, as does Schedule 73, SIN 30249. There's a note that there's a green-only requirement for this SIN, which means that at the schedule level, GSA has said that we only want energy-efficient products available. So we're weeding out the non-Energy Star products there. Let's do a quick jump out to GSA Advantage. Actually, I should have probably lingered there a little bit. So I clicked on this link that says Buy on GSA Advantage, and that actually will take you to GSA Advantage. It'll pre-search the product for you so that you have Energy Star freezers available. You'll see a list of freezers here. I'll provide a brief overview of what these icons mean. The green leaf means that there's some sort of environmental benefit to the product. You can see down here the specific icon shows that it's Energy Star compliant. If you want to go to the specific product detail level, you can click on the link there, and it'll take you to all the different contractors that offer that product. You'll see this green column here with the various Energy Star labels or icons. You'll also notice that there are, at least in some cases, FEMP icons available, and that's because of that guidance we saw about being a solid door. So these products comply with that guidance from FEMP. You may be wondering why some products have the FEMP icon and others don't, and that's because Energy Star is actually an automatic feed we get from the Energy Star program, so it's pretty accurate. They have a pretty robust data registry where they send us the specific products that comply with Energy Star. FEMP, on the other hand, doesn't identify specific products, so we're at the mercy of contractors identifying or self-designating if the product meets those requirements. So we'll see various results when we rely on self-designation. So the key takeaway there is, as a buyer, you have to confirm these designations, whether it's on Advantage or on other ordering portals. And accuracy is something that we're really working hard on at GSA. Some of it comes down to the registries at these various eco-label programs. First, how do we just identify characteristics of 23 million products? So it's something we take very seriously, but we do require that you confirm with the vendor. So back to the GPC, I'll go back to the Procure tab. You can also search for products using a keyword search. So let's say you're looking for some type of cleaner, you can type that. This is the way I would recommend searching, just it's easier for me. I typed in cleaner, you'll see a whole list of different types of cleaners. If you have something specific, you can click on one of those. Otherwise, just search for cleaner in general. You'll get a broad set of search results. And you'll see that it's listed in a way that we provide the requirement right there, so you can quickly scan and figure out what the specific requirements are for these products. So let's specifically drill down into concrete and asphalt cleaners. You'll see the same set of information. 70% bio-based content requirement is the key takeaway. You'll also see that the DFE logo is included. So in this case, that means both those programs have green concrete and asphalt cleaners. In this case, the asterisk is by the bio-preferred program, which means that a FAR tells us that federal agencies are required to buy the bio-preferred products in this case. And you'll see there's other legal requirements here, additional guidance that you can look through. So I encourage you to go through and play with this tool. If there's a product that you buy a lot of, just go there, see what it's telling you, what the requirements are. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on services now. I focus mainly on products, but we buy a lot of services in the government. And so as far as the 95% goal is concerned for green purchasing of services, it essentially requires that products used or supply and performance of that service must be green. And there's, I think, 10 specific services where there's a lot of robust guidance out there. This was just recently added to the GPC, so we have about 8 of those 10 services provided. I think they're all categorized now. This is very fresh. They just populated these within the past couple of weeks. So let's go through and start with cafeteria food services. Say you're supplying, you're in the market to buy some cafeteria and food services for some reason. Up top we have a description of the service, what it's all about. A nice feature we have is a downloadable list of all the clauses and provisions you may need when procuring these services. It comes out as a PDF. We have the list of required green products. So this is really, as far as requirements when you're buying services, this is what you're required to do. So there's a list here of all the different programs that have products that may be procured when you're buying food services. That's somewhat helpful to know. You may be buying cutlery that has to be bio-based, or napkins, which would be recycled content. In order to keep you from guessing, you can go to this Related Products tab and download. It'll provide you with a matrix of all the specific products that we identified you may be buying. On the column, they have the different environmental requirements. So you'll see a matrix of, if you're buying cutlery, it has to be bio-based content. So it really makes that easy for market research and procurement purposes. The GPC also provides some optional green practices that go beyond what's required. GSA partnered with Health and Human Services to provide information for this. So if you want to go beyond what's just required, there's advice as far as what you can offer food and beverage-wise, for general operation purposes, use and maintenance of appliances, and then also green cleaning and pest management. So those are going to vary. These practices will vary depending on the service that you're buying. We also provide information about evaluation factors and how do you consider green and sustainability when buying a service. So I'm not going to walk through all of this, but it gives different advice on how you can actually incorporate sustainability into your evaluation factors. And then finally, where to buy, we have we show you where the GSA Multiple Award Schedule houses these services, and we have a link here to GSA e-library. So that is the Green Procurement Compilation. That's all I have today. So again, my goal from this is to give you a broad overview of the requirements, and then also to give you a tool that you can actually start using in the future. Thanks for letting me take some time. It was pretty fun doing this webcam, and I'll talk to you later.
That was an incredibly comprehensive application, wasn't it? I hope you were thinking of ways to use it in your own agency. Remember, if you have questions for any of our presenters, please use the link to the right of the video screen to submit them. We will try to answer as many as possible during our live question and answer session at the end. Our next speaker from the Environmental Protection Agency is going to talk about the Environmentally Preferable Purchasing Program and the Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool, or EPEAT, that can help your agency purchase greener electronics.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, fellow federal purchasers from around the globe. I understand we have people from all over the U.S. and even the world today, so I really appreciate you taking the time and coming to join us. And I want to thank FAI for having me here today to speak to you. So today, what I'm going to talk to you about is I'm going to give you an introduction to environmentally preferable purchasing and talk about some of the things the government is doing to try to help to better define what environmentally preferable products are to make it easier for us as purchasers to buy greener products and services. I'm also going to then give you a status of our activities so far in the federal community to buy greener products and services, and then I'm going to provide you with some tools and some resources that will help you to buy greener electronic products. So that's what I just talked about. The Environmentally Preferable Purchasing Program. It was established in 1993 by executive order and has been reaffirmed in subsequent executive orders issued by Bush and most recently by President Obama in Executive Order 13514. And all of these executive orders mandated that EPA would try to harness the federal purchasing power to green the markets. And we do that by helping federal agencies to buy greener products and services. We do this for a variety of reasons. We want to reduce the environmental and public health impacts of the products and services that we procure. We want to increase availability of greener products and services throughout the U.S. and the world. And we want to use our demand to create supply globally for products that have reduced impact on on public health and the environment. So our job within my agency and in my program is to work with stakeholders, both inside government and outside government, to create life cycle multi-attribute environmental performance standards for priority products that feds procure. We try to take some of the great work that has been done in many of the single attribute programs in the federal community, such as the bio-based program that Kate will be talking about, the Energy Star program, the FEMP program, and integrate those into one standard that can look at all the environmental attributes of concern for a particular product or service to make it easier for us to buy greener products. And then we provide technical assistance to feds to buy products that meet those standards. So the focus of our program so far has been on electronics and on buildings and on meetings. And I'll be talking more about electronics a little bit further in the presentation. So Brennan noted that Executive Order 13514 tells agencies that they need to advance sustainable acquisition to ensure that 95% of all applicable contracts will be procuring sustainable products, and that includes procuring environmentally preferable products. And Brennan also shared with you the definition of environmentally preferable that's in the executive order. And I just want to emphasize we are looking at the whole life cycle of the product. So we're also looking at the manufacturing that happens, and before manufacturing, even looking at the materials extraction that happens, also looking at the use phase of the product and the disposal impacts, because there are impacts all across the life cycle of the products and services that we use. So this slide just shows you some of the environmental attributes of concern that may exist for some products and services, and these vary according to whatever we might be looking at. This is very complicated stuff. It's very difficult to try to sift through all this information and decide as a purchaser, well, what is greener? What is the greenest thing for me to be procuring? And that's why EPA has the job that we do to try to work with other technical experts to basically look at all of these different attributes of concern for a product and create a set of criteria that help you define what a greener product is. So there are federal requirements for purchasing, excuse me. Let me go to the next topic here. I mentioned that we were going to talk about a survey that we had recently done in looking at the federal government's work to try to buy greener products and services. And we just completed this survey at the end of 2012, and we did this in partnership with the Federal Acquisition Institute. I wanted to again thank them for participating in this activity with us. The survey looked at 3 different key areas. We looked at the awareness and use of EPP by federal purchasers, the impact of EPP on federal purchasing. And when I say EPP, I mean environmentally preferable purchasing, because it's a mouthful. And also we looked at the spillover effect on non-federal purchasing. We conducted a survey of 140,000 federal purchasers. We looked at agency purchasing data, and we did interviews with government and non-government personnel around these questions. And we had some very positive results that we found as a result of this survey. Awareness and acceptance of EPP among federal purchasers has grown since the last survey that we conducted in 2011. We see that at this point, over 80% of purchasers have somewhat or very positive views towards greener purchasing. And green purchasing has increased substantially across the board throughout the federal community. We also have seen that a barrier that used to exist, that Brennan talked about people being concerned about the quality of the products that are greener not being as strong as a non-green product, that barrier no longer exists, that most purchasers do not see that as an issue anymore. And also, we have found through the survey results that environmental factors are a consideration for most purchases today, but they're not yet a high priority. So we have some more work to do. And the biggest barrier that really remains is lack of clarity on what is a greener product. And that means we've got more work we need to do to try to get more standards built that help us to define that for federal purchasers and make it easier for them. So the other thing we found out was that we need better data in order to be able to track what we are buying and particularly what environmentally preferable products we are purchasing in the federal government. And what we know is that when purchasing and environmental data is available, the results of green purchasing are impressive. So we will be working on that in partnership with the Sustainable Acquisition Material Management Work Group and others to try to get a better handle on how we can try to improve our reporting and tracking of purchasing in the government. So let's talk about how to procure greener electronics. So this is a focus area for our program because, as Brennan mentioned, the U.S. government is one of the biggest purchasers of IT products and services in the world. We may be the biggest purchaser. Our IT budget for this year, I believe, was $80 billion. So what we ask for gets built, and not only in the U.S., but globally built and sold. So because of that, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to make sure that we're thinking about environmental considerations as part of those procurements. There are several federal green purchasing requirements for electronics on the books today. Brennan mentioned that feds are required to procure Energy Star qualified and FEMP designated products to ensure that we're minimizing the energy that we use while using our electronic products. We also have requirements in both Executive Orders 13514 and 13423 and in the FAR that we have to ensure if there's an EPEAT standard that exists for a product, that 95% of what we are purchasing meets that standard. So what is EPEAT? EPEAT is short for the Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool, and it's a system that helps purchasers to identify and to select greener electronic products. It's also a system that helps manufacturers gain market recognition for going the extra mile to minimize the environmental and public health impacts of the products that they're selling to us. It's not an EPA program, although we are very involved in the development of the standards that the system is based on, and we do provide advice to the overall EPEAT effort for the federal community. There are three main components of the EPEAT system. It's a set of voluntary environmental performance criteria that defines required and optional environmental attributes for electronic products, a system for listing products that meet the performance criteria, and then a method for verifying that listed products have achieved that specified performance criteria. Right now, EPEAT covers computer desktops, laptops, and monitors, imaging equipment, and televisions, and I'm going to talk about imaging equipment and televisions more in a minute, and there will be standards developed in the next couple of years for servers and mobile devices. So how are standards that EPEAT uses created? They're developed through ANSI-accredited standard development organizations, and ANSI accreditation means that a process is being used by that standard development organization that's open and consensus-based. And for all the standards that have been built and put into and integrated into the EPEAT registry so far, there's been active participation from manufacturers, suppliers, recyclers, academics, government representatives, purchasers, and environmental advocacy organizations. And just as an example, for the development of the imaging equipment and the television standards alone, we had over 400 people participate in those standard development activities. So a significant amount of technical expertise is tapped from around the globe and integrated into those standards. Products can meet 3 different levels of registration under the EPEAT program. So a product can, if it meets all the required criteria in the standard, it can be bronze registered. If it meets all the required criteria and then 50% of the optional criteria, it can be silver registered. And if it meets all the mandatory criteria and at least 75% of the optional criteria, then it can be gold registered. And I wanted to get back to a key point. I previously had mentioned the power of the federal pocketbook to green markets. This happens not only due to our own procurements, but our influence on other purchasers. So today, more than 8 other national governments, scores of cities and states that you can see here, hotel and hospital chains, colleges and universities around the globe are procuring EPEAT registered products and following our example. So what we do really does matter. And as a result of all of those purchases or leases, there have been significant environmental benefits achieved globally. A clear sign that green purchasing is worth doing and gets results. Excuse me. And these results are about to get bigger because EPEAT has just expanded to cover televisions and imaging equipment. And I'm going to talk a little more about that right now. And if you'd like to get a copy of either of the standards in full, you can get them through this URL that I list here. And there is a fee to pay for the standard. I believe they're about $75 a piece. But they are available here. There's also a summary of the standard that's available on epeat.net, I believe. So what's greener about products meeting these standards? So as I mentioned, there's required and optional criteria in every standard. And just as an example, products have to meet required criteria in every one of these environmental performance categories. So for example, all products have to be meeting the Energy Star technical specifications, and most of them meet the FEMP designations as well, where applicable. We also have criteria that help to ensure that minimal environmentally sensitive materials are used in the products. There are also criteria that encourage the use of recycled content and bio-based content. There's also criteria focused on ensuring that the product is easy to disassemble at the end of its life to maximize the recyclability of the product and the reusability of the components of the product. And there's also criteria focused on trying to ensure that we can extend the life of the product to hold on to it as long as possible, so we don't need to go buy a new product with additional new environmental and public health impacts. There's criteria focused on minimal packaging and encouraging take-back of the packaging by the vendor. There's also criteria focused on the overall corporate performance. And there's also criteria looking at and encouraging manufacturers to provide a take-back service. So in every standard, the manufacturers are required to offer a take-back service for the product. They can charge for that. But if they take the product back, then they are committed to, if they're going to recycle the product, sending the product to a recycler that has been certified to an environmentally responsible electronic standard. That's a huge shift from where we've been before, and that is a responsibility, I think, and one of the big benefits that has come from us creating these kinds of standards and being able to use our demand to impact supply and the overall marketplace. For imaging equipment products, we also have criteria there that encourage us to be able to utilize environmentally preferable consumables, which means copy paper, toner cartridges, etc., and criteria that encourages minimizing the indoor air quality impacts of those products. And as I mentioned, there's optional criteria as well that's more stringent throughout all of those categories as well. So, when do we need to start buying EP-registered TVs and imaging equipment? The short answer is now. On May 31st, there was a memo issued by OMB's Office of Federal Procurement Policy and the CEQ's Office of Federal Environmental Executive that was directing agencies to begin to procure EP-registered imaging equipment and TVs. And I have the language here in the next bullet if you'd like to take a look at that. There are also annual energy and sustainability scorecards that are done by each agency, which we are graded on how well we are doing to meet our overall environmental goals, including our progress towards meeting our EP requirements. And as soon as January 2014, there will be questions added to that scorecard related to our procurement of EP-registered TVs and imaging equipment. So the sooner we start greening our purchases of those products, the bigger our numbers are going to be, and the better our score will be, and the happier our bosses will be. So these are the new EP products that are covered. So when I'm talking about imaging equipment, that means printers, copiers, scanners, fax machines, multifunction devices, digital duplicators, and mailing machines. And for televisions, it's any display that's sold primarily as a television, size 15 inches and up. And that includes CRTs, LCDs, LEDs, and plasma televisions. As of the 15th of July, we had 420 EP-registered imaging equipment products on the EP product registry, manufactured by a whole host of manufacturers that represent over 80% of those manufacturing imaging equipment in the market globally today. And for televisions, we had 125 EP-registered televisions manufactured by LG and Samsung, and they represent over 40% of the television market represented today. So at this point, there's no known price differential for any of these products. And I wanted to just emphasize that if you don't see a particular product brand or a particular vendor on the registry that you want to procure from, let your vendors know, because the only way they're going to add products onto the registry is to really feel that there is a demand out there for them to do that. So please encourage that to happen by talking to your vendors. And so how do you find these products? If you want to take a look at all the products that are EP registered, you can go to the EP registry, which is a live update. Happens, I believe they update that every day. And if you go to ep.net, you can get there and see both all of the products that are that are registered by each manufacturer. You can also search by particular product brand. You can also even search by criterion. If you have a particular criterion that you're interested in, you can drill down and take a look and see which products are meeting that criterion. There are a lot of different ways that we buy IT products in the federal community. I don't need to tell you guys that. These are just some of the examples of some of the vehicles that are out there that we procure through. Some of these are IT GWACs. We've got some agencies that have their own IT BPAs. What's important to point out for all of this is that for any of these vehicles, you want to specify that you want EP registered products in all your task orders. I'll talk about our agency-specific IT BPAs in a minute, but for any of these vehicles, make sure you're specifying EP registered throughout, because most of these vehicles are giving us access to both EP registered and non-EP registered products. So that's important to do. Okay, so let's talk about if you have an IT BPA in place and what you can do. If you have future consideration sections in your contracts where you mentioned that you wanted to buy EP registered imaging equipment and TVs when they were added to the registry, you should be able to buy EP registered products now. You may need to specify in task or delivery orders. You should talk to your vendors about that. You might also want to take a look at the number of silver and gold registered products that are on the registry today to see if you want to change any requirements you might have in terms of what level of EP registration you're requiring. If you feel like you have enough products to choose from, that won't be necessary, but take a look to determine whether or not you're comfortable with the options that are available at the level that you have required. If your contract does not include language on purchasing EP registered imaging equipment and TVs, you may still be able to buy EP registered. Check if you can specify EP registered products in task or delivery orders, or consider adding a requirement in an upcoming technology refresh or a contract modification. So, for new contracts, this is the language that we're recommending that you put into any new contracts that you might let. This is a paraphrase of the language that will be added to the FAR in coming months. There's also clauses for computer desktops, laptops, and monitors in the FAR as well. If you're interested in looking at that, I think it's 52.223-16 and 17 and 18, if I'm not mistaken. So this just gives you a heads up of what we will be requiring and the language you can start putting in your contracts right now. In addition to that, we have some recommended language that is not going to be added to the FAR, but will help you with those compliance requirements and to get your numbers up. And what we are recommending is if you are going to put a contract in place where you're going to allow your purchasers to buy through some kind of an e-catalog, we recommend that you put in this sentence here to encourage choice editing and to block non-EP registered products from being available through those catalogs. And I also wanted to talk about reporting. So as I mentioned, the OMB has this energy and sustainability scorecard that all of our federal agencies are required to fill out and submit annually. And there are questions in that scorecard right now related to computer desktops, laptops, and monitors and our purchase of those. There are going to be questions added, as I mentioned, to the scorecard soon. They will most likely mirror the questions that are there for computers. And our intent and the draft questions that we've helped to create are going to just ask questions about sample products to reduce reporting burden for the federal community. So final guidance will be shared on what those questions are via the Federal Electronic Stewardship Work Group, but those will be coming shortly. And for that reason, we recommend that you also consider putting this kind of language in contracts. So this is a way to ensure that the vendors are giving you the data that you're going to need for that O&B energy and sustainability scorecard activity. So you have something that's very easy to provide out as part of your reporting activity. And these are the printers, copiers, MFDs, are the proposed sample product categories that we may be asking to track in the scorecard from here on out. And lastly, I just wanted to mention there's a lot of ways that we can influence the overall environmental impact of the products that we procure, not just at the procurement phase. There is a GSA Bulletin 37, which is called Federal Print Management Practices, that covers a whole host of things that we can do with our imaging equipment products to minimize the environmental impact of those products. And for imaging equipment, double-sided copying is very important, so I wanted to just focus on this a little bit. We have a requirement in the federal community to do double-sided copying to save money and reduce environmental impact. So you can do that by requiring in all of your imaging equipment contracts that all imaging equipment is shipped with duplexing set as our default function. So duplexing means double-sided copying. You should also discuss with your IT operations staff the need to retain that duplexing function during installation of new equipment. And I'm really happy we've got a lot of people in the IT part of agencies that are with us today. I really appreciate you guys being here. So we can maybe start those communications now, and many of you may have already done this work. And I also wanted to point out that you should ensure duplexing function is installed on the computers that you're printing from as well. So this is my contact information and the EPA website, and I'm looking forward to our question and answer period. And thanks very much for your time.
Didn't I tell you that it is easy being green, and the Environmentally Preferable Purchasing Program and EPEAT make it so? As a reminder, all of the presentations you see today, along with the recording of this seminar, will be posted on the Federal Acquisition Institute's website, fai.gov. Don't forget to keep those questions coming. We'll get to those right after our final presentation. Speaking of which, our final presenter from the Department of Agriculture will give us an overview of the Bio-Preferred program, as well as purchasing bio-based products and how to integrate bio-based products into acquisition vehicles.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kate Lewis. I'm Deputy Program Manager of USDA's Bio-Preferred program. Yet another program person with you this afternoon. It's a pleasure to speak to a fair number of you that are participating in this FAI webinar this afternoon. And I'm in the enviable position of being the last presenter. What I'm going to share with you this afternoon in as interesting and compelling way as I can is information about bio-based products. And as the Deputy Program Manager, I pretty much eat, sleep, and breathe bio-based products. I don't eat them, even though they're made from renewable agricultural materials. I would, like corn sugar and cornstarch, I would not recommend you eat them, but by the end of this presentation, I certainly want you to understand what bio-based products are, understand and learn about the products and how they fit into USDA's unique effort to increase their development and purchasing, understand what our obligations are as a federal community to spec and buy bio-based. And in terms of our obligations, this is USDA as an agency who purchases a tremendous amount of products and services. We have these obligations as well. Not only are we in a leadership position with running the program, we're trying to both walk the walk and talk the talk at USDA. And I just want to give a little shout out to the 200 USDA contracting officers and technical folks that are participating on this webinar today. Again, we're also going to learn how to actually translate these various federal environmental and sustainability policies into operational practices, how to actually facilitate the transactions to increase the specificity specification and purchase of bio-based products. And as a part of that, really understand how these products are identified, where they're sold, and how you can increase our federal government's purchasing of them. So let's start at square one, the basics. What is bio-preferred and bio-based and certified bio-based, and how does it relate to USDA? The program was initiated about 10 years ago through the 2002 Farm Bill, and then it was reauthorized. So it gives, Congress has given USDA the authority to run an initiative that identifies bio-based products. And the goal of the program, as you heard Brennan and Holly mention, it's to use the federal purchasing power and use the impact of the federal market to really break open and employ and identify new markets for these products that are made from renewable materials. And the program is led by USDA, as I said, a small staff in our agency. And there's really two sides of the program. And I'm going to focus on one side primarily today. It's the Preferred Federal Purchasing Initiative. There's a related effort that identifies through a certification and labels bio-based products, and it impacts preferred federal purchasing, but it's also a separate sort of standalone consumer-facing initiative. But for the purposes of the webinar today, we're really going to be focused on sustainable purchasing of bio-based. So what is a bio-based product? Before I came to USDA 4 years ago, I could tell you, I guess I thought it was a few. You know, there's biofuels out there, soy bio-based, corn ethanol, but a bio-based product or bio-based products are tremendously, there's a tremendous portfolio of them. That's what I'm trying to say. It is a product that's either an intermediate product sold commercially or an end product, like a final end-use product, that is composed of recent biological materials. What does that mean? It means it is made of agricultural materials. Feedstocks like corn, or a plant-based feedstock like corn or wheat or soy, a forestry-based material, or a material that's made from algae or items sourced from oceans. And these biological materials are manufactured using the latest technological processes into these new revolutionary products. Bio-based products, as I said, are end-use products that the consumer uses and that the federal government uses every day. And it also includes things like renewable chemical components and things like that. Again, not going to touch on those upstream products today. For purposes of this webinar, really going to focus on the bio-based products that the federal government agencies and DoD military service branches use as a part of our operations. So there are a number of policies in the form of legislative and executive drivers that kind of overlay each other. The program's authority was provided by the 2002-2008 Farm Bill, and then as you've heard Brennan as well as Holly, there are these other executive drivers in the form of changes to the federal acquisition regulation, to presidential executive orders that, again, are really trying to lay down the importance of strategic purchasing and procurement for products in a couple key product areas that the government identifies. Some additional drivers that are sort of one level below the executive level policies are the strategic sustainability performance plans, the SSPPs. They're a couple years old at this point, as well as the overlaid OMB scorecards. The OMB scorecards, as you've heard Holly mention, include goals related to sustainable acquisition, including the purchasing and procurement of bio-based products. And these scorecards are reviewed quarterly, they're reviewed annually to really demonstrate and to check up that agencies and DoD are demonstrating 95% of the sustainable acquisition goal. So again, the key part of those last couple of slides is that, and this final slide is that, we're all familiar as sustainable policy and program folks, we're all familiar with Executive Order 13514. We affectionately refer to this as the Greening the Government Executive Order, and there are armies of really forward-thinking professionals, including the acquisition community, that are trying to translate these policies and these goals into practices every day. And obviously the key tenet of Executive Order 13514 for our seminar today is the identification of what the government deems sustainable products, and they're products that fall into one of these 7 product identifiers that you see on this slide. Bio-based being one of the 7, which I'm going to give you a comprehensive understanding and overview today. Last piece of policy is really, I bring it up because it's fairly recent and fairly big picture. Last year, President Obama's administration issued 2 pieces of memorandum or policy that were specifically focused on bio-based products. This is key because it really codifies in a very current way the regulations and policies that exist on sustainable product purchasing, especially as it relates to bio-based. And one of the most interesting aspects of the administration's executive order memorandum on bio-based products, which happened last spring, 2002, was the administration calling for bio-preferred program as well as federal agencies to really strengthen the reporting requirements and the tools and resources to help federal agencies as well as federal contractors working on behalf of those agencies report their bio-based product purchases. So now that you know a little bit more about the products and you know about, as federal employees, our purchasing regulations and requirements, I wanted to just leave you with a couple of whys. Why are we all working so hard to elevate the prominence of these different types of products? Well, specific to bio-based, the increasing development, specification, purchase, and use of bio-based products creates new markets for farm commodities. Farm commodity products, these are agricultural feedstocks, obviously very important to the agency I work for, USDA. You talked about Brennan, you heard Brennan speak about, and Holly reiterate, I won't spend too much time on it, that federal buying and the collective power of the federal market, it can drive markets in terms of additional product development that's related, and other types of governments that kind of ride our coattails to be able to experience the same successes. Increasing the development of bio-based products generates new industries and new products, and the growth of the supply chains that go with those industries and those products. And so it winds up also having a spillover effect of creating jobs, and the kind of really important green jobs or green collar jobs, you might have heard them referred to throughout our country, which has certainly been a nugget of importance that's run through our country in the past couple of years. And lastly, but not least unimportant, the development of bio-based products can reduce the use of fossil fuels because of the way the products are formulated in terms of their new carbon content of the products. In many cases for these products and the categories they're in, and I'll go over those with you in just a minute, what is happening on the R&D side is that a manufacturer is replacing the non-renewable petroleum aspect or petroleum source of the product with a more renewable oil or feedstock created from a more inert ingredient, and one that's certainly more environmentally preferable from a life cycle stage. So again, the displacement of carbon and is important as it relates to the development of these products and the purchasing of them as well. So let's talk a little bit about the federal procurement preference, but let's stay really big picture here. You know about the products, you know what they are. How many products are we talking about here? Again, it is by law, it is a regulation and also codified by policy and various drivers that federal agencies, DoD military service branches, and the federal contractors that support them must show purchasing preference of bio-based products. So there are currently more than 10,000 products to choose from in nearly 100 different categories. And as a federal community, we have to give purchasing preference of these products in whatever way we go about acquiring them, from micro purchases made on purchase cards to the products as they're provided through our acquisition activities, our service contracts. Brennan talked a little bit about that in his opening presentation, our construction contracts. So the next couple of slides are really just designed to give you a bird's eye view of what are these 97 product categories and 10,000 products. What are they? What types of products are they? So they generally fall into product classifications that are most commonly used by the federal agencies in our day-to-day operations. So you can see here there are bio-based product categories where the bio-based contents vary in a number of different cleaning types of products, number of office products. Bio-based printer toner has been developed over the past 5 years, and this is often provided to the federal community in remanufactured toner cartridges, packaging materials, different ink products. For food service and cafeteria operations, disposable cutlery and food cleaners and disposable tableware as an alternative to some of that petroleum-based styrofoam packaging that's quite widely used. O&M, operations and maintenance. So these are some of the more industrial products, the lubricants for machining, different types of engine oils, and some of the really industrial and commercial type cleaning products. On the fleet side, again, in use in federal motor pool operations, you still see some of the lubricants, some fuel additives, greases, hydraulic fluids. Again, these are bio-based products that are available and in use within DoD operations and in federal agencies right now. And on the groundskeeping side, a number of agricultural type products like fertilizers and mulch and compost are composed of bio-based materials. The picture at the bottom is actually an application of a bio-based fertilizer being applied to USDA's Whitman building on the mall in Washington, D.C. And it's very likely that the contracting officer that actually made that happen is sitting in on this presentation today. Again, one of the goals of my presentation is, even though our goals are great as a federal community for product purchasing, it really comes down to individuals making different choices with the right amount of information that's in front of them. And so I know Brennan, Holly, and I have really striving to kind of reduce the burden for you in terms of acquisition and give you the right amount of information you need to amend these contracts efficiently and logically and effectively. Last type of bucket of products, construction materials. These, again, perfect for specification in new construction, building services contracts. You've got, composite panels and roof coating materials and concrete sealers, insulating foam. On this slide are the most common distribution channels that federal buyers can find products for sale. Brennan talked about this, and there are some challenges related to the identification of sustainable products in these portals, but a lot of progress has been made in the past 5 to 10 years about the proper identification of all of the
identified federal sustainable products. GSA Advantage has more than 20 million green or sustainable products in there. So it is important that as a buyer, we trust what the vendor information articulates, but we verify as well. And with tools like the Green Purchasing Compilation, it's making that verification a lot easier for us. In terms of the bio-preferred program, we not only identify bio-based product categories and products within them that meet a particular bio-based content, we also develop tools and resources for the manufacturers of those products and to link to the buyers of the products on the federal side. And we develop our tools and our resources based on the barriers that we're seeing in the federal marketplace. So, I think one of the barriers that has been debunked has to do with availability of bio-based products. And as you can see from the information that Brennan presented, these products are available both in standard acquisition means and also through supply sites for the federal government. Holly talked a lot about product quality, and this was a barrier not only for bio-based products, but some of the other environmentally preferable products that the government was really struggling to buy as well. There was this myth that I also think has been debunked, as Holly presented through some of the EPP survey results over the past couple of years, that the product quality of green or sustainable offerings wasn't as efficacious as a conventional product. And what we've really seen as these products have matured and the science behind them has grown is that that's not really an issue anymore. It is possible to find readily available sustainable products with the same or even better quality as their conventional counterparts. And this information on the slide gets at a barrier that we hear a lot, especially from consumers and federal buyers and commercial buyers. Oh, bio-based products are too expensive. If I had it in my budget, or I could spec and procure them. Well, based on some pricing data that our program did about a year ago, we're starting to see that, yes, in some cases, in some products, in some categories, there is a slight green price premium. But for many products in other categories, it's just simply not there. And you can see that that's what this information shows, is that bio-based products are available at the standard price points, if not below standard price points of conventional products. Some additional program tools and resources we've created are contract language templates to make it easier for contracting officers and technical folks that advise them to really drop in information related to increasing the specification. There are 7 standard bio-based contract clauses on our website for the most common types of federal contracts that could use bio-based products. And these contract templates are for custodial services, food services and cafeteria, grounds and maintenance, minor construction, operations and maintenance, and vehicle maintenance. And so you can see the contract clauses fall into the kind of bundles that that you saw me present in the earlier slides. I guess lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't point you to our program's website. It's right here on the slide, www.biopreferred.gov. It is really your one-stop shop for bio-based information. And we hope that you will certainly, after this learning seminar, feel free to go there and download the resources and tools that we've created, especially to make this process an easier one. And, it's really our hope that federal acquisition professionals through the workforce collaboration with us, the policy and the program staff, the Brennans and the Hollies and the Kates of the federal community, we can make sure that the federal sector is greening our marketplace, and we're also in turn making global product markets more efficient and more sustainable. Thank you for your time and your attention today. And I think after a short break, we will convene, the three of us, to answer the questions that have come in during the seminar.
That was an amazing overview of the Bio Preferred program. We hope you found all of the presentations today valuable and extremely useful. If you didn't before we began, I'll bet you now see just how easy it is for your agency to be green. But don't go anywhere. We've been collecting and consolidating the questions you've submitted. After a brief break, we'll bring our entire panel together and we'll try to answer a few of your questions. We'll be back in a moment.
We're back. I have a set of questions here we're going to go through. I'll start. The first question says, if we procure cloud-based how do we consider green in the federal government? Like, how are we tracking things like the 95% goal? So for the 95% goal, I think there was another question directly to this. OMB does track that, and it's on the report card. The agency gets a green, yellow, red light based on how well you perform. So they are tracking at OMB for that. As far as cloud-based IT services, that's not considered part of the 95% goal, so that's not considered green in that aspect. I'm not sure if there's another OMB question related to that or not. I don't believe there is specific to cloud-based services, but Holly does have some additional information about cloud-based requirements.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I think it's really important that we are encouraging our clouds to be as green as possible. So when we are putting our requirements together, we want to make sure that we are requiring that any vendor that we are procuring IT services through for cloud-based services is using Energy Star qualified servers. And then also there are a couple of different initiatives to put together criteria for what defines a green data center. And I'm sorry to say that I don't know the titles of those initiatives off the top of my head, but I know DOE has a big activity in this area and EPA does as well. I would very much encourage you to Google those and get that information about the kinds of criteria that are defined through those green data center initiatives, and think about including those as requirements in any cloud-based IT services acquisition. So let's see, I had a question about cost, two questions about cost. So the first one was, which way is greater, cost or being greener in a purchase? So I wanted to just say here that all federal purchasers are mandated to get the best value for the government as part of any procurement. Best value means looking at cost, value, performance, as well as environmental impacts. And luckily for most green products, there's really no price differential at this point. So you don't have to pay more to get a greener product in many instances. The second question that I had that was related, so I'll just do that one as well now. There was a question, a lot of times I hear that buying green and environmentally preferable products is more expensive than not buying green. Is there any truth to this? Has it changed over the years and maybe it's actually cheaper to go green in 2013? The federal community makes it cheaper by using our demand to bring down the costs for all purchasers. So I think that's a really important part of what all of these green purchasing activities are about. There's no known price differentials for EP registered products at this point, which I mentioned, and that's really the focus area that I have that I'm familiar with. Brennan, you had a couple things you wanted to mention about that too.
Yeah, so and I saw in your presentation you had some price analysis too, and in some cases green products were Oh, do I need to come this way? In some cases, the green products, or the buyer-preferred products, were more expensive. In other cases, they weren't. We did a similar study at GSA for products, paper products, I think, with recycled content, and we found similar results where in some categories there was a slight price premium. I think we looked at 8 categories, and about 4 had a slight premium, but the other 4 had a slight differential, and actually 2 had a significant opportunity for savings. I think they were envelopes or something like that, where the green products were significantly cheaper. So I think it's just it just depends. Sometimes green products are more expensive, and sometimes they're not.
Yeah, I guess if I could add to that, what I would add would be that these things are incremental. And as we all achieve progress, that issue of price premiums and price differential, it becomes less and less of an issue for everybody. This is something that the vendors that make these products are up against every day as well. So we're really sort of two audiences here that are trying to share the same message. Like, it's just impossible to look at first cost, solely at first cost, as an aspect in these purchasing, in our purchasing activity. It's very difficult. We certainly all know the incredible financial constraints that the federal community and all of us within the federal community have been put under this year. But it is possible to make these transactions happen with the right information and the right kind of information. Yeah, I'd be happy to share this. I think it's a very interesting sort of case study. I'm a CO and recently did a solicitation for a roof repair project. In the technical proposal from the offerers, I identified bio-preferred products to be used under the contract. Woo! Also, the roof TPO was an EPA EPP, and there was identified a building construction recycle waste program that will be used. Excellent. My question is, what does the vendor report to biopreferred.gov? Only the bio-based item or all environmentally preferable products? And this is actually, it's a very strategic operational question, because the answer to this is, we're still figuring that out. So work with us and help us pilot this reporting. I mentioned the Obama Memorandum of Understanding that was issued last spring. One of the 8 tenets of the MOU was, hey, federal agencies, specifically USDA, help each other figure out what type of reporting is necessary to feed the OMB stoplight scorecard. And is that widget level reporting? And is that a good idea? And if so, how would we move forward as a community to make that happen? And so these are all questions that are still being addressed and asked. And the best way to get them answered is to work with a handful of COs on actual projects for actual agencies that we can demonstrate operationally this type of reporting is feasible and this type isn't. So I would say to the questioner, please get back in touch with me, Kate Lewis at USDA.gov, and let's involve you in this dialogue, in this demonstration to help answer that question. Because as a result of this Obama executive order, we put up right before Christmas 2012 this reporting portal on our website, and it's a start. It's not comprehensive at this point, and it won't solve all the reporting questions, but the thinking is, with a federal sustainable products reporting work group, we can kind of start to plug in this data, analyze it, and see if this type of approach is going to work. So can you address widget level reporting and EPP and or EPEAT?
Well, so for EPEAT, in that Energy and Sustainability Scorecard, I offered up the list of questions that are in there right now related to computers, desktops, and laptops, and monitors. And so we have sort of widget level reporting right now through the scorecard, and then we're going to be adding some questions related to image equipment and television soon.
That's right. You said by 2014, right?
Yeah, January. And so, but we're minimizing the products we're going to be asking the questions about, because at least the draft questions that exist right now only are that are being discussed right now really are just focused on 3 sample product categories, and that was to try to reduce the burden on all of us as federal purchasers and reporters for this data. So, so we do have that information, and I think a lot of purchasers have found it really helpful to put that reporting language into their contracts where they can then get the information from their vendors and then roll that up without too much trouble in cases where we are buying through contracts. A little trickier when we have more decentralized procurements happening, and it really varies by product and service category. So.
Good. All right. It's my turn. Here's a good one. Does GSA ensure that all applicable green purchasing requirements are embedded in their FSS contracts? If so, would you agree that a delivery order, task order off a GSA FSS contract does not need to repeat the applicable green purchasing requirements? So that's a really good question. The multiple award schedules do include the major contract clauses. So if we're selling a product that falls within the Energy Star program, we'll have the Energy Star clause in our schedule contract, which will then flow down to the delivery order and task order. But we do think you should reinforce that requirement at the delivery or task order level. If you want to re-include the clause, it doesn't hurt. But also, if you want to make sure that it's in your requirements document, then that's a good idea, because just because a clause is in there, if it gets ignored, it does get ignored a lot. There'll be a clause that may not be honored. You may not get that green product, so you have to really reinforce it at the task order and delivery order level. So, your turn.
Yeah, I'm done.
You're done?
Answered my question.
Jeez.
Back to you, Brennan.
Do we do a group question?
Yeah. Sometimes we want to talk about the weather. I feel like I'm a newscaster.
I'll just take another one then. I think this one came in under the group questions too, similar questions. How do these requirements apply to procurement of professional services, say architecture/engineering services? So I'm assuming this question, when you're talking about professional service, I think of services that don't require many products, where you really just have someone at a desk, at their site as a contractor doing some work, and at the end of the day you may get a report. And in that case, right now, if there's not many products that are being used that fall within the green purchasing requirements, we just require that those professional service contractors provide their deliverables electronically, or 30% recycled content paper double-sided. In some cases, that's all you can do right now. But if there are instances where these professional service providers are actually using or supplying products covered by the GPC, then they are subject to, they should be using those green products in the green procurement compilation. And I will go ahead and note that GSA and folks from EPA and other parts of the government are looking at how can we green some of these services, like professional services. What are the actual impacts arising from these services? So there's actually a standard development group, NSF International, that is creating a standard specifically for service and service providers that we think will, once that's ready, will address this question and could potentially be incorporated for federal use. So I think that's it.
That's really interesting to know, because at least I can't speak for all of the different categories of federally identified sustainable products, but for bio-based products, with the limited amount of reconnaissance and research we've been able to gather on this, our feeling is that more of the bio-based products are in use in the federal sector as a result of service contracts as opposed to straight product acquisition.
I think most procurements actually are service buys now for GSA. Most of what we buy are services, and then the products come through those contracts. So that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think for professional contracts, for professional service contracts, we want to make sure that we're buying EP registered, that the vendors that we are getting those professional services from are utilizing EP registered computer desktops, laptops, and monitors, TVs, and imaging equipment. So that's something that I would make sure to include in those contracts.
Okay. I have an easy one. Can you send the websites for the EPA, DOE, USDA green programs? That was on the green procurement tool or compilation. If you want to go there. Otherwise, I don't think we have a way to send it. But I think my presentation linked to the GPC, which has that information there. All right, let's do a group one. I'm tired of mine.
All right, where's our group list? Let's see. Where's the
all right.
road up?
They're all still for me, kind of. Yeah, this is it. Can someone speak to the specific role of the contracting officer in green purchasing? And I actually had a similar one like that. If I work primarily on evaluation contracts, do I have an obligation to require that they engage in green purchasing? So both kind of about the roles of different stakeholders in the procurement process. So the question, I think it kind of gets to the question sometimes that the procurement folks will have, well, I have these requirements for products that aren't green. Do I add it in when I'm being asked to procure something that doesn't have that requirement? And then, maybe on the other side, the program folks with the requirements are maybe relying on the COs to actually make sure those requirements get in there. So it's kind of like a dispersed responsibility, but everyone in the procurement team is responsible to meet these green purchasing requirements. So if I was the CO and I had a request for a computer that was covered by the EP program, but if they were asking for a specific requirement that maybe wasn't necessary and that maybe excluded it from EP, I would really make sure that the product could meet the requirements that are required in the FAR and the executive order. So I think you're responsible as a CO to make sure that these green purchasing requirements are included. Yeah.
There was a question here about someone asked, well, why not just follow LEED guidelines? And for those who aren't familiar with LEED is a set of standards that determines what a green building is. And so it's really focused on both new buildings and existing buildings. And so if you are doing any kind of building construction contract, it's a very useful tool. And in fact, the people in my program, I mentioned we focus on electronics and buildings and meeting services. And for buildings, we have been very involved in the LEED program and in providing input to help to both develop and to strengthen the criteria under the LEED standards that are built by the U.S. Green Building Council. So I think that is definitely a very good tool for building construction, but it really focuses just on that category, so we can't use that program to look at our electronics procurement or a whole host of our other products and services that we purchase and utilize in the federal government.
Right.
I've actually got one I'll raise. I think it's an interesting question, and it addresses kind of overlap and some limitation, which is always good to sort of get out there. How does the use of bioproducts that require much more carbon-based fuels to process actually benefit us as opposed to naturally occurring products? And this is a really strategic question, and it's very difficult to answer. And I think, Holly, it brings up the issue of the federal government and there being some duplication of effort related to, okay, just you've laid out all these products, what should we buy and what takes precedence over what? And, USDA's identification of bio-based products is based on one attribute, the product's renewable bio content. Okay, so the product's renewable carbon content, and that's measured in a standard test method that's been vetted and identified. But the bottom line is that USDA identifies bio-based products, these cleaning products, construction products, O&M, fleet products, and we're identifying them just based on their amount of renewable content. Well, that's good, but that's also not so good. The legislative authority that our program has outlines USDA to do that. And that probably made sense 10 years ago when we originally received the authority. But the identification of green or sustainable products in the past 10, 20 years has gotten much more sophisticated, and rightfully so, much more strategic, so that at this point, buyers are not necessarily looking at just one aspect or attribute of a product. Holly's slides had covered this, but looking at multi-aspects of the product, even the materials or ingredients used to supply the product. So there is an issue with what's the best way to most hasten the best types of products being spec'd and procured and used. And there's a little bit of limitation in terms of the bio-based products. Just because it's certified bio-based, which USDA does, or identified by the bio-preferred program for preferred federal purchasing, doesn't necessarily mean in all cases it's a more environmentally preferable product. And that's really important. And that's really tough. It's tough to say that, because then that introduces another level of confusion. Well, then why is the federal government requiring us to do this? I think, I guess long story short, and in summary, and I'd love to hear from both of you on this, because this is known within the federal community, and I think that there's an opportunity for some real, as we go forward, enhanced collaboration, or to fold bio-based as one attribute into more EPP identified products. For right now, bio-based identified is standalone. Is it necessarily going to be that way in the future? I don't know. Does it need to be? Maybe, maybe not. I hope and I'd love to hear Brennan and Holly what you think about this, because I think our opinions could really be enlightening to answer this question. It's a tough question because there really aren't any easy answers.
Right. So when I was presenting, I had an example of, I think, a concrete asphalt cleaner that was both bio-preferred and DFE. So
Designed for the environment.
yeah, and it would be interesting to see how many, it would take a lot for a contractor to get both certifications, and there's time and expense to that. But I'd imagine that a lot of those bio-based products probably could go through the DFE product, and you would have both a non-low toxic product that meets a DFE requirement or a similar standard like that, as well as being bio-based content. So you would get both of those attributes for that product, and I think over time that these kind of attributes are going to align, like we're seeing with EPEAT, including Energy Star and other attributes. So,
and quite honestly, I think that that's one of the biggest strengths of EP registered products, is that they are multi-attribute, and it's a simpler and easier way to address these other attributes that have been afore addressed through these very singular programs and processes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've heard a lot from purchasers that they appreciate having all of the different things they need to be thinking about in terms of green purchasing in one standard, ask for one thing, and then they know that they are getting all of their green purchasing requirements met. So that's what we have seen as one of the big values of the multi-attribute standard approach. And I think we had to start from a single attribute program perspective at first, because there was just a lot we didn't know, and we really needed to get data so that we could then collect all the data we had on, well, what is a water efficient set of guidelines for this product? What do we want to set as thresholds around bio-based content related to this product? What kind of energy efficiency guidelines we want to have around this product? And then we can put those things together. But if we don't have them, then it's hard to put them all together. So we're now at a really neat place in green purchasing because we now have more information, and I think we're able to now start to think about how we can better integrate it and make this all easier for everybody. And we need to get more information as we go about those trade-offs between different environmental attributes of concern, and there's some tough choices in some of those decisions and those conflicts between two attributes. So it's not simple, but it's where we need to be heading, I think.
Next question. Is money available from any government source for going green, or is this on each department to fund the necessary upgrades?
So I think, purchase of these, it's not some special allocated fund, to my knowledge. I mean, we're talking about general funds allocated for your procurement activities. These aren't. I think it sounds like there's a perception that these are special type products for specific initiatives, when what we're really talking about are products that are commercially available, but are green. So if you think of Energy Star, I think there's actually another question along these lines about how do we have the money to buy these these special green products, but that's kind of the point. They're not. These are products that are available in the marketplace. You can go to Home Depot and see WaterSense products available, Energy Star products. So the answer is yes, money is available. It's from the funds you're already using to buy, I guess.
And none of us are sitting up here and trying to be glib about this. We're all under these tremendous constraints to do more with less, and we realize that when you have to do more with less, or even the same amount, in some cases would be a luxury, your job gets harder, and all of our jobs are getting harder. But hopefully that pressure will just help us become even more efficient and collaborate all the more.
Yeah, and the next question is what kind of followed on, similar question. How do these programs, in parentheses, green energy products versus proven efficient equipment, line up with budget restrictions? So I think it's kind of the same question. I mean, these are proven products. These are energy efficient products. I think when I describe each program, the first thing these programs look at when they certify a product is if it works. That's really the most important component of a green product. If it doesn't work, it's really not sustainable. So I just got a sign that was our last question. Thank you for listening to us answer your questions, and take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for tuning in to today's Acquisition Learning Seminar, It Is Easy Being Green. We hope you join us for future acquisition learning seminars hosted by the Federal Acquisition Institute. And from all of us here at the Federal Acquisition Institute, we thank you.